Millionaire visits her single dad, ex-husband. After 5 years, one unexpected gesture changes everything. Before anything else, if you're watching this from a place of struggle, know that you're not alone. Drop a heart below. The marble floors of the Grand Meridian Hotel gleamed under the afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Victoria Sterling stood in the entrance, her Valentino heels clicking against the polished stone, as she surveyed the lobby that had witnessed the beginning of her journey 5 years ago. Back then, she'd been nobody, just another ambitious girl with more dreams than dollars. Now at 32, she was the CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech empire worth $3 billion, and she'd returned to Seattle to close the deal that would cement her legacy. Her assistant, James, trailed behind with her schedule, but Victoria wasn't listening. Something had caught her eye across the expansive lobby. A man in a grey maintenance uniform knelt beside one of the ornate planters, carefully wiping down the brass fixtures. His movements were methodical, practiced, efficient. Dark hair fell across his forehead as he worked, and even from this distance, even after all these years, Victoria's heart recognized him before her mind could catch up. Marcus. Marcus Chen, her first love, the man she'd left behind when she'd boarded a plane to San Francisco with nothing but a one-way ticket and a job offer that promised to change her life. And it had changed her life, just not in the ways she'd expected. Beside Marcus, perched on a velvet bench near the planter, sat a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with dark, braided hair and enormous brown eyes that followed her father's every movement. The child wore a yellow sundress and light-up sneakers, and she clutched a well-worn book in her small hands, but she wasn't reading. She was watching Marcus work with an intensity that seemed unusual for such a young child, protective almost, as if she were standing guard. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. A daughter. Marcus had a daughter. "Miss Sterling?" James's voice cut through her thoughts. "The car is waiting to take you to the mayor's office. We're scheduled for 3 o'clock. But Victoria wasn't moving. She couldn't, because at that moment Marcus looked up from his work, and their eyes met across the crowded lobby. Time didn't stop. That was a cliché. And Victoria Sterling had built her empire by dealing in facts, not fairy tales. But something shifted in the air between them, a recognition that went deeper than sight, deeper than memory. Marcus's hand froze on the brass fixture. His face went pale, then flushed, and Victoria watched him swallow hard, watched his jaw clench in that way she remembered so well. The little girl noticed her father's sudden stillness and turned to follow his gaze. When her eyes landed on Victoria, they widened with curiosity, and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition, though that was impossible. They'd never met. "Give me a moment," Victoria heard herself say to James. Her voice sounded distant, not quite her own. She crossed the lobby with the confident stride that had intimidated boardrooms full of men twice her age. But inside, her heart was hammering like she was 23 again. Standing in Marcus's tiny apartment, trying to explain why she had to leave, why this opportunity was too important to pass up, why she couldn't stay even though she loved him, even though she'd loved him more than she'd ever loved anything. Marcus stood slowly, wiping his hands on a cloth tucked into his belt. Up close, Victoria could see the changes 5 years had carved into his face. New lines around his eyes, a hardness to his jaw that hadn't been there before. But his eyes were the same, deep brown and honest, the kind of eyes that had always seen straight through her carefully constructed facades. Victoria. Her name on his lips felt like a prayer and an accusation all at once. "Marcus." She tried to smile, but her face felt stiff. "It's been a long time. 5 years." His voice was flat, carefully neutral. 3 months, 17 days. The precision of his answer hit her like a physical blow. He'd counted. All this time, he'd counted. "Daddy." The little girl's voice was soft but clear. "Who is she?" Marcus's expression softened as he looked down at his daughter. "This is an old friend, sweetheart." The word friend hung in the air between them, wholly inadequate for what they'd been to each other. Victoria looked at the child, really looked at her, and felt her breath catch. The girl had Marcus's eyes, his elegant bone structure, but there was something else in her face, something hauntingly familiar that Victoria couldn't quite place. "I'm Lily," the girl said, standing up with her book clutched to her chest. She had a formal, old-fashioned way of speaking that seemed beyond her years. "I'm 6 years old, and I'm reading about space. Did you know that light from some stars takes so long to reach Earth that the stars might already be dead by the time we see them?" Victoria blinked, caught off guard by the child's articulation and the surprising sophistication of her observation. Yes, I did know that. That's very impressive knowledge for someone your age." Lily beamed, and Victoria saw Marcus's hand settle protectively on his daughter's shoulder. "Lily is very bright," Marcus said, and there was fierce pride in his voice. "She's homeschooled. We manage." The word "we" stood out. No mention of a wife, of Lily's mother. Victoria's mind raced through possibilities, questions she had no right to ask. "I didn't know you had a daughter," Victoria said carefully. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Pain, anger, something darker she couldn't name. "There's a lot you don't know. You left before." He stopped himself, glanced down at Lily, and seemed to recalibrate. "It's been 5 years, Victoria. People's lives change. I can see that." Victoria looked around the lobby, at the maintenance cart, at Marcus's worn uniform with his name embroidered over the pocket. "You're working here now?" A muscle jumped in Marcus's jaw. "I'm the night maintenance supervisor. I've been here for 4 years. It's honest work, and it lets me be with Lily during the day." There was defensive pride in his voice, but also something else, a weariness that made Victoria's heart ache. The Marcus she'd known had been studying architecture at UW, brilliant and passionate about design, full of plans to change Seattle's skyline. "I wasn't judging," Victoria said softly. I wondered what happened. We lost touch." "You lost touch," Marcus corrected, his voice quiet but sharp. "I stayed exactly where you left me." The words cut deeper than any shout could have. Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but James appeared at her elbow, anxious and insistent. "Miss Sterling, we really need to leave. The mayor—" "I know." Victoria's CEO voice slid back into place like armor. She reached into her Prada bag and pulled out a business card, extending it to Marcus. "My number, in case you ever—" "What? Want to catch up? Need anything?" The casual phrases felt obscene in the face of what they'd once meant to each other. Marcus stared at the card, but didn't take it. For a long moment, Victoria thought he would refuse entirely. Then Lily's small hand reached out and plucked the card from Victoria's fingers. "Thank you," the girl said politely. "Your card is very pretty. Is that real gold lettering?" "Yes, it is." Victoria found herself smiling despite the tension. "You have a good eye." "Lily," Marcus said, a warning note in his voice, but his daughter had already tucked the card carefully into her book, marking her place. As Victoria turned to leave, she heard Lily's voice, clear and curious. "Daddy, why do you look so sad?" She didn't hear Marcus's answer, but as she walked away, Victoria realized her hands were shaking. After 5 years of hostile takeovers and high-stakes negotiations, after facing down investors and competitors who would have destroyed her given half a chance, it was a 6-year-old girl with her father's eyes who had shaken her. That, and the way Marcus had looked at her, like she was a ghost of someone he'd once loved, haunting a life he'd built in her absence. That night, in her suite at the Fairmont Olympic, Victoria stood at the window overlooking Elliott Bay. The Seattle skyline glittered against the dark water, beautiful and foreign. She'd conquered San Francisco, built an empire that spanned 3 continents, but Seattle, the city where she'd fallen in love, where she'd made the hardest choice of her life, still felt like unfinished business. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it and her breath caught. And her breath. It was a photo. Lily, wearing pajamas, covered in stars, holding up Victoria's business card like a trophy. The message below read, She wouldn't stop talking about the pretty lady with the golden card. She has questions about your company. Fair warning, Lily's questions are never simple. Victoria stared at the message for a long time. Then with trembling fingers, she typed back, I have time for complicated questions, and maybe some complicated answers, if you're willing to hear them. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. When Marcus's response finally came, it was just 2 words, tomorrow, noon. Victoria didn't sleep that night. Because she'd spent 5 years building a fortune, but she'd left something far more valuable behind in Seattle. And sitting in that hotel lobby, watching Marcus work, while his extraordinary daughter kept vigil beside him, Victoria had realized something that terrified her. Some prices are too high to pay, no matter what you gain in return. But the question that kept her awake, staring at the ceiling as dawn broke over Puget Sound, was simpler and more devastating. What if she'd realized it too late? Victoria arrived at the address Marcus had texted her at 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. A habit from years of power plays, where arriving first meant controlling the space. But this wasn't a boardroom, and the address wasn't what she'd expected. Instead of a restaurant or cafe, she found herself standing in front of Discovery Park, Seattle's largest green space, where forests met the beach, and the Puget Sound stretched out toward the Olympic Mountains. Families spread blankets on the grass. Children shrieked with laughter on the playground, and there, on a bench overlooking the water, sat Marcus and Lily, a picnic basket between them. Marcus spotted her first, raising his hand in a tentative wave. As Victoria approached, she noticed he'd changed from his maintenance uniform into jeans and a simple navy sweater that she remembered, or maybe one just like it. Some things apparently didn't change. Ms. Victoria. Lily hopped off the bench, her braids bouncing. Today, she wore overalls with embroidered sunflowers and those same light-up sneakers. Daddy said you might come. Did you know that Discovery Park used to be called Fort Lawton, and it was a military base during World War II? I didn't know that, Victoria admitted, charmed, despite her nervousness. How did you learn that? The library, Lily said matter-of-factly. I read everything. Daddy says I'm insatiable. That means I can never get enough, but in a good way, not like being greedy. Marcus stood, and Victoria caught the flash of uncertainty in his eyes before he masked it. I thought neutral ground would be better, and Lily loves the park. It's perfect, Victoria said, and meant it. There was something disarming about the setting, something that stripped away the CEO armor she usually wore. She was just Victoria here, not Sterling Innovations' founder. Just a woman meeting the man she'd once loved and the daughter she'd never known existed. They sat on the bench, while Lily immediately returned to building an elaborate structure out of sticks and leaves at their feet, narrating the process under her breath, like a young architect explaining her design. She does that, Marcus said quietly. Creates things. Says she's going to be an engineer when she grows up, or a doctor, or an astronaut. It changes daily. She's remarkable, Victoria said, watching the child work with focused intensity. Her vocabulary, her curiosity. Marcus, she's exceptional. Something tight crossed Marcus's face. She is, and it's been, challenging. Regular school wasn't working. The other kids didn't understand her, and the teachers didn't know what to do with a kindergartner who was reading at a 5th grade level and asking questions about quantum physics. Quantum physics? Victoria couldn't hide her surprise. She found a book about it at the library and became obsessed. I don't even understand half of what she asks me. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Victoria remembered from late-night study sessions when he'd been stuck on a design problem. I try, Victoria. I read everything she reads, stay up late learning so I can at least attempt to answer her questions. But sometimes I feel like I'm failing her. You're not failing her, Victoria said firmly. Look at her. She's confident, articulate, happy. That doesn't happen by accident. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Her mother left when Lily was 6 months old. Just walked out one day and never came back. No note, no explanation. I came home from class, and found Lily in her crib, screaming, and Jessica was just gone. Victoria's chest tightened. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. I dropped out of the architecture program," he continued, his voice steady but distant, like he was recounting someone else's story. "Couldn't afford childcare and tuition. Couldn't ask my parents for help. They'd already sacrificed so much putting me through school, and they're retired now in Arizona on a fixed income. So I got the first job I could find that offered decent health care and let me work nights. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, watches Lily while I'm at the hotel. She's 76 and charges me almost nothing because she loves Lily like a granddaughter." Each sentence felt like a revelation of the life Marcus had built in her absence, a life shaped by responsibility and sacrifice, by love for a child he was raising alone. Victoria thought of her own life, the penthouse in San Francisco, the private jet, the assistants and drivers, and endless luxury. "And you never? There's no one else?" she had to ask. Marcus shook his head. "Haven't had time for dating. Haven't had the interest, honestly. Lily is my priority. She's everything." He paused. "What about you?" "The business news says Victoria Sterling is married to her company, but I figured that was just media spin." "It's not spin," Victoria admitted. "I've had relationships, but nothing that stuck. No one who understood why I work the way I do, why I can't just turn it off." She looked out at the water. "I've been called cold, ruthless, single-minded, and they're not wrong. That's not the Victoria I knew." Marcus's voice was soft. "The Victoria I knew cared so much, it hurt her. She felt everything. Maybe that's why I had to learn not to feel." The words came out before Victoria could stop them. "If I'd let myself feel everything after I left you, I would have come back. And I couldn't come back, Marcus. That job, that opportunity, it was survival. My family was drowning in debt, my father's medical bills alone." She stopped herself. They'd never talked about this, not really. She'd kept her family's financial crisis private, too proud to admit that the brilliant, ambitious Victoria Chen, she'd reclaimed her father's surname after making her fortune, had come from nothing. Marcus was staring at her. "I didn't know. You never said your family was in trouble." "I couldn't." Victoria's laugh was bitter. "I was so focused on appearing successful, on making you think I had it all figured out. The job in San Francisco paid 3 times what anything in Seattle offered. I sent most of it home for years, paid off my parents' house, my sister's college tuition, the mountain of hospital debt. And I thought you left because Seattle wasn't enough for you, because I wasn't enough." The pain in Marcus's voice was raw. "I thought you chose ambition over us." "I did choose ambition," Victoria said honestly, "but not for the reasons you thought. I chose survival, for my family and for myself. I just wish I'd been brave enough to tell you the truth." They sat in silence, watching Lily add to her stick structure, which had become surprisingly elaborate. The child hummed as she worked, completely absorbed in her creation. "She has your focus," Marcus said. "That intensity when you're working on something. I see it in her." Victoria's throat tightened. "Marcus, can I ask you something? Why didn't you call, text, email? You had my number, at least for a while." Marcus was quiet for so long that Victoria thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I did call, 3 months after you left." Victoria's head whipped toward him. "What? I never—" "You answered." Marcus's eyes were fixed on the water. "You answered, and I heard you laughing. There was music in the background, voices. Someone called you Victoria Sterling. You'd already changed your name back. Someone else asked if you were coming to the after party. You sounded so happy, so free, and I realized you'd already moved on. You'd already become someone new. Who was I to drag you backward?" "Marcus." Victoria felt tears burning behind her eyes. "That could have been any night, any meaningless event. I went to hundreds of those parties, and I was miserable at every single one. But you were there. You were building the life you wanted. And I was here, barely holding it together after Jessica left, trying to figure out how to be a single father to a baby who never stopped crying." Marcus finally looked at her. "I couldn't ask you to give up everything you'd worked for, and I was too proud to admit I needed help." "Daddy!" Lily's voice broke the tension. "Come look, I built a bridge." They both stood, grateful for the interruption. Lily had indeed constructed a miniature bridge using sticks, spanning a small gap between two rocks. The engineering was surprisingly sound, and she'd even added supportive crossbeams. "That's incredible, sweetheart," Marcus said, genuine pride in his voice. Victoria knelt beside the structure, examining it carefully. "Lily, this is really impressive. See how you've distributed the weight? That's advanced thinking. Have you studied engineering?" "Only in books," Lily said, "but I think about how things work all the time. Like, how does a skyscraper stay up when it's so tall? Why don't bridges collapse when cars drive on them? What makes an airplane fly?" "Those are exactly the questions engineers ask," Victoria said. An idea was forming in her mind, dangerous and impulsive. "Lily, how would you like to visit a real engineering lab? See where people design buildings and bridges and figure out those exact questions?" Lily's eyes went wide as saucers. "Really? You could do that?" "Victoria," Marcus said, a warning in his tone. But Victoria was looking at Lily's face, at the pure, unfiltered wonder there, and she couldn't stop herself. "I'm in Seattle for 2 weeks, closing a business deal. My company has a small research facility here. We work on smart building technology, structural innovations. It's fascinating stuff, and I think you'd love it." "Can I, Daddy, please?" Lily grabbed Marcus's hand, bouncing on her toes. Marcus's jaw was tight. "Lily, Ms. Sterling is very busy." "I'm not too busy for this," Victoria interrupted. She met Marcus's eyes, trying to communicate something she couldn't say in front of his daughter. "Please, let me do this." She saw him wavering, pride warring with his desire to give Lily opportunities he couldn't provide alone. Finally, he nodded. "One visit, if it fits your schedule." "Tomorrow," Victoria said immediately. 2 o'clock, I'll send a car." "We'll take the bus," Marcus said firmly. "Just send me the address." Pride. He still had so much pride. Victoria wanted to argue, but recognized the set of his jaw. Instead, she pulled out her phone and sent him the location of Sterling Innovations' Seattle research facility. They spent another hour in the park, watching Lily play, making careful small talk about Seattle's changes and safe topics that didn't cut too close to the bone. But the real conversation hummed beneath the surface. Years of unsaid things, of regrets and what-ifs and roads not taken. As Victoria walked back to her car, she heard Lily call out, "Bye, Miss Victoria. Thank you for letting me visit your building. I'm going to read everything I can about smart technology tonight." Victoria waved, but her eyes were on Marcus, who stood with his hands in his pockets, watching her leave with an expression she couldn't quite read. That night, Victoria sat in her hotel suite with her laptop open to a blank document. She'd told James to clear her afternoon tomorrow, rearranging meetings that had taken weeks to schedule. Her CFO had called it wildly out of character. He wasn't wrong, but as Victoria pulled up the files on Sterling Innovations' Seattle facility, an idea began to take shape, one that went far beyond a simple tour for a curious child. She opened a new search window and typed Gifted Education Programs, Seattle, then Scholarships for Exceptional Children. And finally, her fingers hovering over the keys, Marcus Chen, Architect, Seattle. The search results showed nothing recent. As if the man she'd known, the brilliant designer who dreamed of reshaping skylines, had simply vanished, replaced by a night maintenance supervisor who sacrificed his own dreams to give his daughter a chance at hers. Victoria closed her laptop and walked to the window. Somewhere out there, in a modest apartment she'd never seen, Marcus was probably reading whatever Lily had brought home from the library, preparing to answer impossible questions from a 6-year-old genius. And Victoria Sterling, who'd built an empire by always looking forward, never backward, found herself doing something she hadn't done in 5 years, wondering what her life would look like if she'd made different choices, if she'd been brave enough to ask for help instead of running, if she'd loved Marcus enough to stay. No, that was wrong. She had loved him enough. She'd loved him so much that she'd left, refusing to drag him down into her family's financial crisis, refusing to burden him with her desperation. But love without honesty, she was beginning to understand, was just another kind of leaving. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Lily wants you to know she finished her space book and started one on structural engineering. She's already asking questions I can't answer. You don't have to do this, Victoria. The tour, all of it. We're fine. Victoria stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, I know you're fine. You've always been fine. But maybe, just maybe, you don't have to do it all alone. See you tomorrow, Marcus. She added one more line. And for what it's worth, I'm not the same person who left. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I think I'm finally ready to stop running. The 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No response came. Victoria went to bed not knowing if Marcus had accepted her tentative olive branch or if tomorrow would bring more walls, more careful distance, more years of regret condensed into polite small talk. But as she drifted off to sleep, she saw Lily's face, bright with curiosity and wonder, and Marcus's eyes holding pain and pride in equal measure. And Victoria Sterling, who'd spent 5 years making decisions worth billions of dollars, made a resolution worth far more. Whatever happened, whatever it cost, she was going to find a way to help them. Not because she could, but because once upon a time she'd walked away from the person she loved most. And maybe, just maybe, the universe was giving her a chance to make that right. The Sterling Innovations Research Facility occupied the top 3 floors of a modern glass building in South Lake Union, Seattle's tech corridor. Victoria arrived early, personally overseeing preparations that her staff found baffling. The CEO never involved herself in visitor tours, yet here she was, adjusting display angles and requesting that Dr. Sarah Mitchell, their lead structural engineer, be present for the afternoon. She's 6 years old, James reminded her cautiously. Should we maybe simplify some of the presentation? Absolutely not, Victoria said. Trust me on this. At exactly 2 o'clock, the reception desk called up. Ms. Sterling, your guests have arrived. Victoria took the elevator down herself, another break from protocol that had James exchanging confused glances with her security detail. The doors opened to reveal Marcus and Lily in the lobby. Marcus wore the same jeans and sweater from yesterday, but he'd clearly made an effort, his hair neat and his shoes freshly cleaned. Lily wore a blue dress with pockets. For collecting things, she'd probably insisted, and clutched a notebook and pencil like precious cargo. Hi, Miss Victoria, Lily waved enthusiastically. I brought something to take notes. Is that okay? That's perfect, Victoria said, her chest tight at the child's earnestness. Real engineers always take notes. She caught Marcus's eye. He looked uncomfortable in the sleek corporate lobby, but he managed a small smile. Thank you for this. She barely slept. Dirty. Me neither, Victoria admitted, then wished she hadn't when Marcus's eyebrows rose. I mean, I was excited to show you the facility. We don't usually give tours to the public. She led them to the elevator, hyper-aware of Marcus's presence beside her, of the way Lily's eyes tracked everything, the security panels, the modern art on the walls, the building directory listing companies she probably couldn't fully understand, but was reading anyway. Sterling Innovations focuses on smart building technology, Victoria explained as they rose. We create systems that make buildings more efficient, safer, and more responsive to the people inside them. Everything from earthquake-resistant structures to buildings that adapt their energy use based on occupancy. How do buildings know how many people are inside? Lily asked immediately. Sensors, Victoria said. Tiny devices that detect motion, heat, even the CO2 levels that change when people breathe. The building's computer system reads all that data and makes adjustments. Like the building is thinking, Lily said, her eyes wide. Exactly like that, Victoria smiled. We're teaching buildings to think. The elevator opened onto the research floor, and Lily gasped. The entire space was open plan, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Lake Union and the Seattle skyline. Engineers worked at standing desks surrounded by multiple monitors. Scale models of buildings lined the walls. In the center of the floor, A massive holographic display projected a rotating 3D model of a skyscraper. "Whoa!" Lily breathed. Marcus was staring too, and Victoria realized with a pang that this was probably the closest he'd come to his old dream since dropping out of architecture school. "Doctor," Mitchell approached, a woman in her 50s with grey-streaked hair and an easy smile. "You must be Lily. Victoria tells me you have questions about engineering." "So many questions," Lily confirmed seriously. "How do you make buildings earthquake-proof? Why don't skyscrapers fall over in the wind? What's the tallest building that could ever be built? Can buildings be made from something besides steel and concrete?" Dr. Mitchell laughed with delight. "Oh, I like you. Let me show you something." She led them to the holographic display and gestured at the rotating building. "This is our current project, a 40-story residential tower in San Francisco. See these elements here?" She highlighted sections in blue. "These are dampers, giant shock absorbers that let the building sway safely during an earthquake instead of cracking." Lily leaned in, fascinated. "Like knees bending so you don't fall down." "Exactly," Dr. Mitchell beamed. "And see these cross braces? They distribute force throughout the structure. No single point takes too much stress." For the next hour, Victoria watched Lily absorb information like a sponge, asking increasingly sophisticated questions that had Dr. Mitchell calling over other engineers. Marcus stood slightly apart, his face unreadable as he listened to his daughter discuss load-bearing calculations and structural redundancy with PhD holders. "Can I try?" Lily asked finally, pointing at a computer station where an engineer was adjusting building specifications. Dr. Mitchell looked at Victoria, who nodded. "Show her the basics." What happened next would be the subject of office gossip for weeks. Lily sat at the computer, tiny hands on the mouse, and within minutes was navigating the design software with startling intuition. When Dr. Mitchell showed her how to add a support beam to the digital model, Lily studied the structure and said, "But if you put it here instead, wouldn't it carry the weight better and use less material?" Dr. Mitchell recalculated. Yes, it would. How did you?" She looked at Victoria, then at Marcus, then back at Lily. "Sweetheart, have you done this before?" "No," Lily said, "but I can see how the forces move. Like water flowing, it wants to go somewhere, so you have to give it a good path." The engineers exchanged glances. Victoria felt her heart pounding. She'd suspected Lily was gifted, but this was different. This was the kind of spatial reasoning and intuitive understanding that couldn't really be taught. "Marcus," Victoria said quietly, drawing him aside while Lily was absorbed in the computer, "do you understand how exceptional she is?" Marcus's expression was complicated, pride mixed with worry and something darker. "I know she's smart, Victoria. I've always known. But what am I supposed to do with that? I can barely afford rent. Private schools for gifted kids cost tens of thousands a year. Special programs, tutors, opportunities, they all cost money I don't have. There are scholarships, which require applications, essays, test scores that cost money to get, which require a parent who has time to navigate the system and drive to meetings and interviews." Marcus's voice was low but intense. "Do you know what my life looks like, Victoria? I work 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week. I sleep while Lily's at Mrs. Patterson's until 3 p.m. Then I spend the afternoon with her, helping with her studies, taking her to the library because we can't afford to buy books, cooking dinner that's cheap and filling but not always nutritious. Then I sleep for 2 more hours before work, and I do it all again." He ran his hand through his hair, that familiar gesture now tinged with exhaustion. "I'm giving her everything I have, and it's not enough. I see how her mind works, how she needs more than I can provide, and it's killing me." Victoria's throat was tight. "Let me help." "How?" Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Write a check? Throw money at the problem? That's not help, Victoria. That's charity. That's you swooping in with your billions to fix the poor people. That's not what I—" "Isn't it?" Marcus's eyes were bright with unshed tears and frustration. "You show up after 5 years, and suddenly you want to save us? Where were you when Jessica left? and I was figuring out how to change diapers while studying for finals. Where were you when Lily was diagnosed with chronic ear infections and I had to choose between paying for antibiotics or rent? Where were you for every single impossible choice I've made? The words hit Victoria like physical blows. She had no answer because he was right. She hadn't been there. She'd been building her empire, making her fortune, becoming the kind of person who could afford to help, but only after the help was no longer enough. "Daddy?" Lily's voice cut through the tension. She stood by the computer, her notebook clutched to her chest, eyes wide and worried. "Are you mad?" Marcus's face transformed instantly, all the frustration melting into love. "No, sweetheart, I'm not mad. I'm just talking to Ms. Victoria about grown-up things." "You look sad," Lily observed with that unnerving perceptiveness. "I don't want you to be sad. This is the best day ever." Victoria watched Marcus crouch down to his daughter's level, watched him smile and assure her that everything was fine, watched him carry the weight of his exhaustion and frustration with such practiced ease that a 6-year-old couldn't see the cracks, and she made a decision. "Marcus, can we talk privately?" She looked at Dr. Mitchell. "Could you show Lily the scale models?" "I'd love to," Dr. Mitchell said, already guiding an enthusiastic Lily toward the display wall. Victoria led Marcus to her office, a glass-walled space with a view of the Space Needle and Elliott Bay beyond. She closed the door and turned to face him. "You're right," she said, "about everything. I left. I built my life and didn't look back because looking back hurt too much. I convinced myself it was better that way, cleaner. I didn't know about Lily or Jessica or what you were going through, but maybe I should have. Maybe if I'd called back, if I'd reached out just once." "Victoria, let me finish." She took a breath. "You don't want charity. I understand that. But what if I'm not offering charity? What if I'm offering something else entirely?" Marcus crossed his arms, defensive. "Like what?" "A job." The words came out before Victoria had fully formed the thought, but once said, they felt absolutely right. Not for you, not directly for Lily, or rather, because of Lily. "She's 6 years old, Victoria." "I know. Hear me out." Victoria moved to her desk, her mind racing through possibilities, connections, solutions. Sterling Innovations has a foundation. We fund STEM education, sponsor gifted programs, provide scholarships. But we've been looking for a way to connect more directly with exceptional young minds, to identify them early and provide mentorship, resources, opportunities. "And you want to use Lily as a test case?" Marcus said flatly. "No," Victoria met his eyes. "I want to create a program, a real one with oversight and structure, that identifies gifted children from underserved communities and provides them with educational support, resources, tutoring, access to facilities like this one, mentorship from professionals. And yes, Lily would be one of the first participants, but she wouldn't be alone." Marcus was listening now, the defensive posture softening slightly. "That sounds ambitious and expensive." "I have ambitious resources," Victoria said, "and I've been looking for the right project, something meaningful beyond profit margins and market share. This could be it. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. This isn't about you and me. This isn't about guilt or second chances or trying to rewrite the past. This is about a brilliant little girl who deserves every opportunity to develop her gifts, whether you and I ever resolve what happened between us or not." She paused, then added quietly, "Although I'd like to try. To resolve it, I mean. If you're willing." Marcus walked to the window, staring out at the city. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Do you know what the worst part was? Not the struggling, not the exhaustion, not even raising Lily alone. It was the waste. I look at buildings every day, Marcus, skyscrapers and bridges and structures that someone designed with the kind of vision I used to have, and I wonder what I could have created if things had been different, if Jessica hadn't left, if you hadn't left, if I'd had just one person to share the load." "I'm here now," Victoria said. "I know that's not the same. I know I can't give you back those 5 years, but I'm here, and I'm offering help. Real help, not charity." A program that could change lives, starting with Lily's. Marcus turned back to her. And what happens when you leave again? When the Seattle deal closes and you fly back to San Francisco? Lily's already attached to you. I saw it yesterday at the park, saw it again today. What happens to her when you disappear? The question hung between them, sharp and necessary. I don't know, Victoria admitted. I don't have all the answers, Marcus. I can't promise I won't hurt you again, or her. What I can promise is that I'll try not to, and that any program we create will exist independently of my personal presence. It'll have structure, funding, staff. It won't disappear if I do. But you will disappear, Marcus said. Eventually, that's what you do. The accusation stung because it was true. Victoria had spent 5 years running, from Seattle, from memories, from anything that might slow down her relentless forward momentum. Maybe, she said, or maybe I'm tired of running. Maybe seeing you again, meeting Lily, remembering who I used to be. Maybe it's made me realize that empire building is lonely work. That success without anyone to share it with is just expensive emptiness. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. You've changed. So have you. Yeah, he almost smiled. I got taller. I can now reach the top shelf without a stool. Despite everything, Victoria laughed. It was such a Marcus thing to say, deflecting heavy emotion with gentle humor. You were always tall. You just had terrible posture from hunching over your drafting table. I don't have a drafting table anymore. The moment of levity passed. I know. Victoria moved closer, careful not to invade his space. But you could, if you wanted, if you were willing to dream again. Dreams are expensive, Victoria. I learned that the hard way. So is regret, she countered. Trust me on that one. They stood there, 2 feet apart in Victoria's office, with the city spread out behind them and years of unsaid things pressing between them like a physical weight. Finally, Marcus spoke. Okay to the program, to letting Lily participate, to seeing where this goes. He held up a hand. But with conditions. First, this has to be real, not just something you create as an excuse to see us. If you're going to do this, do it right. Help other kids, not just Lily. Second, you don't make promises to her that you can't keep. She's already lost one parent. I won't let her lose another. The word parent sent a jolt through Victoria, but she nodded. Agreed. What else? Third, Marcus hesitated. I need time to process all this, to figure out what it means that you're back. I'm not the same person you left, and you're not the same person who left. I don't know if there's still something between us, or just ghosts of what used to be. That's fair, Victoria said, even though part of her wanted to argue, to confess that she'd thought about him every single day for 5 years, that seeing him again had cracked open something she'd sealed shut for self-preservation. But Marcus was right. They needed time. And fourth, Marcus's expression was almost shy. I'd like to see the full proposal for the program. I may not have my degree, but I know education systems, know what Lily and kids like her need. If I'm going to let you do this, I want input. Victoria felt something warm bloom in her chest. I wouldn't have it any other way. A knock on the glass. Doctor. Mitchell stood outside with Lily, who was practically vibrating with excitement. Victoria opened the door. Miss Victoria, Doctor. Mitchell showed me the earthquake simulator and the wind tunnel and the building materials lab, and she said, I have exceptional spatial reasoning, and that I should consider being a structural engineer when I grow up. Lily paused for breath. Can I be an engineer? Doctor, Mitchell said it's a great career for girls, and that there should be more of us in the field. Victoria crouched down to Lily's level. You can be anything you want to be, and I'm going to make sure you have every opportunity to explore what that is. Really? Lily's eyes were shining. Really? Hear that, Daddy? Lily grabbed Marcus's hand. I can be an engineer, or an astronaut, or maybe both. Is there such a thing as a space engineer? Yes, Victoria said. It's called aerospace engineering, and we'll learn all about it. She stood, catching Marcus's eye. He looked overwhelmed, grateful, and terrified all at once. She understood completely. They spent another hour at the facility. Victoria introduced Lily to more engineers, watched her examine scale models with intense focus, observed her ask questions that made PhD holders pause and reconsider their explanations. And she watched Marcus watch his daughter, saw the love and pride and desperate hope on his face. As they prepared to leave, Lily threw her arms around Victoria's waist in an impulsive hug. "Thank you for the best day ever. You're like a fairy godmother, but for science." Over Lily's head, Victoria met Marcus's eyes. He mouthed, "Thank you." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. In the elevator ride down, Lily chattered non-stop about everything she'd learned. Marcus was quiet, but his hand found Victoria's for just a moment, a brief squeeze of fingers that said everything words couldn't. Outside, as they waited for the bus, Victoria made herself say it. "I meant what I said in there, about being tired of running, about wanting to try." Marcus adjusted Lily's backpack on her shoulders, buying himself time. "I believe you mean it right now, in this moment. But moments change, Victoria. Feelings fade. The question is, what happens when the shine wears off? When helping us becomes complicated or inconvenient, or just another obligation on your endless schedule?" "Then I guess we'll find out," Victoria said, "if I'm capable of being someone different than I was." The bus arrived, its brakes hissing. Lily climbed aboard, already telling Marcus about the holographic display. Marcus paused on the steps, looking back at Victoria. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you came back. Even if I don't know what comes next, even if this all falls apart, I'm glad I got to see you again." Marcus. But he was already boarding, the doors closing between them. Victoria stood on the sidewalk and watched the bus pull away, watched until it disappeared into Seattle traffic. Then she pulled out her phone and called her foundation director. "Jennifer, Victoria Sterling, I need you to drop everything and start working on a new educational initiative. Full funding, immediate implementation. I want the proposal on my desk by end of week." "What's the focus?" Jennifer asked. "Gifted children from underserved communities. STEM mentorship. Real opportunity, not just feel-good optics. And Jennifer, this is personal. I need it to be perfect." "Understood. I'll assemble the team." Victoria hung up and stood there a moment longer, looking up at her building, at the city skyline beyond, at the mountains in the distance. 5 years ago, she'd left Seattle chasing success. She'd achieved it beyond her wildest dreams. But standing here now, with the memory of Lily's hug and Marcus's hand in hers and the possibilities stretching ahead, Victoria realized something. Success without meaning was just winning an empty game. It was time to play for different stakes. That evening, back in her hotel suite, Victoria opened her laptop to work, but found herself instead pulling up old photos from her phone's archived cloud storage. There they were, her and Marcus, 5 years younger and impossibly naive, believing love was enough to build a life on. Marcus in his studio apartment, surrounded by architectural models. Victoria at her old job, exhausted but hopeful. The two of them at Discovery Park on a day that looked just like yesterday. She'd deleted these photos years ago, or thought she had, but apparently her phone had saved them anyway, preserving evidence of a life she'd left behind. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Lily went to sleep still talking about building earthquake-proof skyscrapers on Mars. You've created a monster. Thank you." Victoria smiled and typed back, "The best kind of monster. Same time tomorrow? I want to discuss the program proposal. Your input, remember." The response came quickly. "I work tomorrow night, but I'm free for coffee at 10 a.m. if you're up that early." "I'm always up that early. It's a character flaw. I remember, you used to make coffee at 5 a.m. and wake me up with the grinder. You loved it. I tolerated it because I loved you." The message sat there on her screen, past tense but present feeling. Victoria stared at it for a long moment before typing, "Coffee at 10. We have a lot to talk about." "Yeah, we do." Victoria set down her phone and walked to the window. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably doing exactly what she was, staring at the city lights, wondering what came next, whether hope was brave or just another kind of foolishness. But for the first time in 5 years, Victoria wasn't running from the question. She was standing still, letting it exist, preparing to find out the answer. Whatever it cost, whatever it changed, whatever it might become. Victoria arrived at the small coffee shop in Fremont 10 minutes early, ordering 2 Americanos before Marcus appeared. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes from his night shift, but he smiled when he saw her. "You remembered how I take my coffee," he said, accepting the cup. "Black, 2 sugars. Some things don't change." They sat by the window, and Victoria pulled out her tablet. "I worked on the proposal last night. The Sterling Foundation STEM Excellence Program. Full scholarships, mentorship, access to facilities and resources. We'd start with 10 children in the Seattle area, ages 5 to 10, identified through schools and community centers." Marcus studied the document, his expression serious. "This is comprehensive. Equipment grants, family support stipends, summer intensives." He looked up. "The family support, that's for parents who might need to reduce work hours for appointments and activities." "Exactly. I don't want financial burden to be a barrier." Victoria hesitated. "Marcus, I need to ask you something. Would you consider being part of the program, not as a participant parent, but as an advisor? You understand what families like yours need better than any consultant I could hire." Marcus set down his tablet. "You want me to help design this. I want your expertise, your perspective, and yes, I'd pay you as a consultant. Before you argue, this isn't charity, it's recognizing valuable knowledge." She met his eyes. "You've navigated a system that wasn't built for people like you. That insight is worth more than any degree." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I'd want to visit the other families, make sure the program actually meets their needs, not just what we think they need." "Done. And I want Lily treated the same as the other kids. No special privileges because her father knows the CEO." "Agreed," Victoria smiled. "Anything else?" "Yeah." Marcus leaned back. "I want to know why you're really doing this, and don't say it's just about helping kids." Victoria traced the rim of her coffee cup. "You asked yesterday where I was when you needed help. The truth is, I was building something I thought mattered, but I was also running from the fact that I left you when you needed me most. I didn't know about Lily or Jessica, but I knew you, Marcus. I knew you'd never ask for help, even if you were drowning, and I left anyway." "So this is guilt?" "Partially," she admitted. "But it's also recognition. I spent 5 years becoming someone who could make a difference, and then I did nothing with that power except make more money. Seeing Lily, seeing what you've sacrificed, it reminded me why I wanted success in the first place. Not for penthouses and private jets, but to have the resources to actually help people." Marcus studied her face. "I believe you mean that. But I'm scared, Victoria. Scared of letting Lily get attached to you and then losing you again. Scared of letting myself hope that maybe we could." He stopped. "That maybe there's still something here worth exploring." Victoria's heart hammered. "Is there? For you?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. 5 years is a long time. We're different people. But when I'm with you, I remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. Your passion, your drive, the way you see problems and immediately start solving them." He smiled sadly. "I just don't know if remembering is enough." "Then let's find out," Victoria said. "No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 old friends working together on something that matters. And if something more develops, we'll figure it out. If it doesn't, at least we'll have helped some kids who deserve it." Marcus extended his hand across the table. "Partners." Victoria shook it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. Partners. Over the next week, they fell into a rhythm. Victoria would meet Marcus and Lily in the afternoons, sometimes at the park, sometimes at the library, once at a children's science museum, where Lily asked so many questions they got a private tour from the director. Marcus would join Victoria for coffee in the mornings, reviewing program details, identifying potential participant families, building something real and meaningful together. And slowly, carefully, The walls between them began to crumble. Victoria learned about Marcus's life, his friendship with Mrs. Patterson, his weekly video calls with his parents in Arizona who adored their granddaughter, the small joys he'd found in single parenthood. Marcus learned about Victoria's empire, the late nights and early mornings, the constant pressure, the loneliness of success that came with isolation. "I have everything," Victoria confessed one morning, "except anyone to share it with." "You have us now," Marcus said quietly. "If you want us." Victoria looked at him, at the hope and fear warring in his eyes, and made a choice. "I want you, both of you, however that looks." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. This time he didn't let go. 2 weeks into their reunion, Victoria's past arrived in the form of a phone call. She was in a meeting with Marcus, reviewing applications for the STEM program, when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost declined, but something made her answer. "Victoria Sterling." "Ms. Sterling, this is Detective Sarah Reeves with Seattle PD. I'm calling regarding a case from 6 years ago. Do you have a moment?" Victoria's blood ran cold. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway. "What case?" "It involves a Jessica Marie Chen. She was reported missing by her partner, Marcus Chen, approximately 6 years ago. The case went cold, but we've recently identified remains found in a remote area outside Bellingham. DNA confirms it's Jessica Chen." Victoria felt the floor tilt. "Dead? But Marcus said she left." "According to our records, Mr. Chen filed a missing person report 3 months after she disappeared. Stated she'd left their apartment with no explanation and never returned. He assumed she'd abandoned him and their infant daughter." The detective paused. "Ms. Sterling, we understand you have a personal relationship with Mr. Chen. We'd like to speak with him, but given the sensitive nature and his daughter's age, we wanted to handle this carefully. Would you be willing to facilitate a meeting?" Victoria's mind raced. Marcus thought Jessica had abandoned them. For 6 years he'd carried that belief, raised Lily with the story that her mother had chosen to leave. But Jessica hadn't left. She'd died. "When?" Victoria managed. "Tomorrow, if possible. And Ms. Sterling, there are additional details about the case that Mr. Chen needs to be aware of. Details that may be difficult." After hanging up, Victoria stood in the hallway shaking. She had to tell Marcus, had to shatter the reality he'd built for himself and for Lily. She found him still in the conference room, looking at photos of a bright 8-year-old boy who loved robotics, perfect for their program. "Marcus," Victoria said, and something in her voice made him look up sharply. "We need to talk." She told him everything. Watched his face go white, then grey. Watched him process that Jessica hadn't abandoned them. She'd died, possibly on the very day she'd disappeared. "She's been dead this whole time," Marcus whispered. "All these years, I thought she just didn't love us enough to stay. I told myself she was out there somewhere, living her life, not caring about Lily. And she was." "I'm so sorry," Victoria said, taking his hands. "The detective wants to meet with you tomorrow. Marcus, she said there are details about the case, about what happened to Jessica." Marcus pulled his hands away, standing abruptly. "I need to think. I need to process this. Victoria, I can't." "I understand." But Marcus was already leaving, grabbing his jacket, his movements jerky and mechanical. At the door, he stopped. "Lily, what do I tell Lily? She's 6 years old and she's already lost her mother once. Now I have to tell her she's dead, that she's been dead." "We'll figure it out," Victoria said. "Together. You don't have to do this alone." But Marcus shook his head. "I've always been alone, Victoria. Even when you're here, you're going to leave eventually. Everyone leaves." He walked out, and Victoria let him go, understanding that some grief needed space. The next day, Victoria accompanied Marcus to the police station. Detective Reeves was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat them down in a private room and opened a file. "Mr. Chen, I want to express my condolences. I know this is incredibly difficult." She pulled out photos, not of Jessica, but of documents. "Jessica's death has been ruled a homicide. She suffered blunt force trauma consistent with an assault. We believe she was killed shortly after leaving your apartment that day." Marcus's face was stone. "Who?" "That's where this gets complicated." Detective Reeves pulled out another document. Jessica had recently taken out a substantial life insurance policy, $500,000. The beneficiary was listed as Lily Chen, with you as trustee. Victoria felt cold understanding dawning. Marcus seemed lost. "I don't understand. We didn't have money for life insurance." According to our investigation, Jessica had been working as a paralegal at a law firm downtown. She took out the policy 3 weeks before her death through her employer's benefits program. "Mr. Chen, did you know Jessica was planning to leave you?" Marcus's head snapped up. "What? No. She left without warning. We found her journal in a storage unit registered under her maiden name. She'd been planning to leave for months, had saved money, arranged an apartment, but she wanted to secure Lily's future first." Detective Reeves's voice was gentle. "She loved your daughter very much, Mr. Chen. She just couldn't stay in the relationship." "Why?" Marcus's voice broke. "Why couldn't she stay? The journal mentions postpartum depression, feelings of inadequacy as a mother, fear that she was failing Lily." The detective closed the file. "Sometimes people can't stay even when they love someone. It doesn't make them bad people." Marcus stood abruptly. "Do you have suspects?" "We're investigating several leads. Jessica's plans to leave were known to a few people. We'll be in touch as the case develops." Detective Reeves stood as well. "Mr. Chen, there's one more thing. The life insurance policy. It's still valid. The payout, with interest, is nearly $600,000. It belongs to Lily." Victoria watched Marcus process this final blow. His daughter, the child he'd struggled to provide for, had been a millionaire all along, and he'd never known. Marcus didn't speak on the drive back to Victoria's hotel. She'd insisted he come with her rather than be alone, and he'd been too numb to argue. In her suite, Victoria made tea while Marcus sat staring at nothing. Finally, he spoke. $600,000. All this time, struggling to pay rent, working nights, watching Lily wear second-hand clothes, and there was money. Money Jessica left for her. "You didn't know," Victoria said gently. "I should have known. I should have looked harder when she disappeared, should have filed the missing person report sooner. Maybe if I had, they would have found her body earlier, found whoever killed her. Marcus, this isn't your fault, isn't it?" He looked at her with haunted eyes. "I was so angry when she left, so focused on that anger, on feeling abandoned, that I didn't question it, didn't wonder if something was wrong. I just accepted that she'd chosen to leave us." Victoria sat beside him. "You were a new father, overwhelmed and alone. You survived, Marcus. You kept Lily safe and loved and thriving. That's what matters." "Is it?" Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Because right now I'm looking at my life and seeing nothing but failures. Failed relationship, failed career, failed to even realize my daughter's mother was murdered." "Stop," Victoria said firmly. "You are not a failure. You're a father who sacrificed everything for his child. You're a man who worked 2 jobs and still made time to answer every impossible question Lily asked. You're someone who turned pain into purpose and raised an extraordinary little girl who feels loved and secure. That's not failure, Marcus. That's heroism." Marcus turned to her, and suddenly his face crumpled. Victoria pulled him into her arms as he finally broke. 5 years of grief and exhaustion and fear pouring out. She held him while he cried for Jessica, for the life they'd never had, for the mother Lily would never remember. When the storm finally passed, Marcus pulled back, wiping his face. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Victoria brushed his hair back from his forehead, the gesture achingly familiar. "You're allowed to break down. You're allowed to feel everything you've been holding back." "I don't know how to tell Lily," Marcus whispered. "How do I explain that her mother didn't leave us, but that someone took her away? How do I make that better?" "We'll figure it out," Victoria said, "together. I meant what I said, Marcus. You're not alone anymore." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "You're not leaving, are you?" Even after all this mess, you're staying." "I'm staying," Victoria confirmed, "for as long as you'll have me." Marcus cupped her face in his hands. "I never stopped loving you, even when I hated you, even when I tried to move on. I never stopped." "I never stopped either," Victoria whispered. And then he was kissing her, desperate and tender, and full of 5 years of longing. Victoria kissed him back, tasting salt from his tears and coffee, and something that was purely Marcus. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "What do we do now?" "Now?" Victoria smiled through her own tears. "Now we take it one day at a time. We help Lily process this news. We catch whoever hurt Jessica. We launch the STEM program. We figure out what we are to each other now, after everything. And you'll stay? Even when it gets hard?" "Especially when it gets hard," Victoria promised. "I ran once, Marcus. I'm not running again." The next weeks were difficult. They told Lily the truth, in age-appropriate terms, that her mother had died when she was a baby, that she hadn't chosen to leave. Lily cried and asked impossible questions, but she also showed remarkable resilience. "Daddy stayed," she said simply. "And now Ms. Victoria is here too. I'm sad about my mommy, but I'm not alone." The Sterling Foundation STEM Excellence program launched 2 months later with 10 brilliant children from across Seattle, Lily among them. Marcus became the program's family liaison, using his experience to help other parents navigate the system. The police investigation into Jessica's death led to an arrest. A co-worker at her law firm who'd been stalking her, who'd discovered her plans to leave and couldn't accept her rejection. The trial was painful, but it brought closure. Victoria and Marcus rebuilt their relationship slowly, carefully. Coffee dates became dinners. Dinners became weekend trips with Lily. Victoria started splitting her time between San Francisco and Seattle, then finally moved her primary residence back to the city she'd left behind. "I built an empire," she told Marcus one evening as they watched Lily play in Discovery Park, 6 months after their reunion. But coming back here, being with you and Lily, this is what actually feels like success." Marcus took her hand. "So the ruthless CEO has a soft side after all." "Only for you two," Victoria said. "Everyone else still gets the Ice Queen." "Good," Marcus grinned. "I like being special." A year after their reunion, Marcus enrolled in night classes to finish his architecture degree. Victoria insisted on paying, and for once, Marcus accepted help gracefully. 2 years after, he graduated and was hired by a Seattle firm, his first designs already winning attention. 3 years after, Victoria proposed, not with a grand gesture, but quietly at home with Lily present, because they were a family, and Lily should be part of every important moment. Marcus said yes. Lily cheered and immediately started planning the wedding with engineering precision. They married in a small ceremony at Discovery Park, with Lily as the flower girl and Mrs. Patterson crying in the front row. Victoria wore a simple dress. Marcus wore a suit he'd actually bought new, not borrowed. And when they said their vows, promising to stay, to fight, to never run from hard things again, both meant every word. "I left once," Victoria whispered as they danced at the reception. "Biggest mistake of my life." "You came back," Marcus whispered into her hair. "That's what matters." And as the sun set over Puget Sound, as Lily danced with Dr. Mitchell and Marcus held his wife close, Victoria Sterling, née Chen, now Chen Sterling, finally understood what her mother had tried to tell her years ago. Success isn't measured in dollars or deals. It's measured in moments like these. In second chances, in love that survives everything, even 5 years and a lifetime of mistakes. Some stories don't have happy endings, but some do, and this one, against all odds, did.